Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful empowered harmonizers. We're zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question, and that is, what do you do when a individual who you're in a relationship with, or trying, or working hard, or struggling, or seeking to get into a relationship with someone really who is emotionally unavailable? They're just not there. They might be there physically, but they're not there in a connected way. They're not there in an emotional way. You feel that there's something lacking. You have to jump up and down and do a triple backflip or do something drastic to get their attention. They're just not giving you the time. They're not giving you the time of day, the eye contact, the hug, the acknowledgement, the validation. Whatever it is, there is a lack of emotional openness. And oftentimes, people who are emotionally unavailable for many reasons. So they might be preoccupied with something that they're trying to complete or accomplish, like their school or a job, or something that's going on with their family, or they're shy. They might have social anxiety issues, or they might have personality disorders, such as someone who is a narcissist, who has a pathological sense of self-absorption. They might be just so preoccupied with themselves that they can't really sort of be at another's level. They're always at another level. They're sort of untouchable, unreachable. And yet these people can be very exciting or alluring. Or someone who is narcissistic in an overt way, meaning it's all about them. They have to be the life of the party, the life of the day, the life of the workplace. They just have to be the it person, the one who is the more important one in the relationship. So there's not a really feeling of equality. And people, especially who might suffer from low self-esteem, low self-worth, might find these people very attractive because they have an abundance of energy or qualities or talents that they feel that they are lacking. So they tend to sort of satisfy their needs for importance or significance by attaching onto this individual to supply these needs, to make them feel bigger than life, to make them feel like they're better, or they're going to have a better life if they're in a relationship with this type of person. In other words, this person has enough ego. Because you have no ego or a damaged ego, this person might feel, whether you look at this subconsciously, like they're the solution to your issues. This person does it for me. They save me from my life. They save me from my unhappiness. They save me from my loneliness. So you might really sort of fall for the love bombing from this type of individual because all of a sudden they make you feel special, important. But, a narcissist will do that to sort of hook their supply. And what's the problem is that there is no consistency as you continue on a relationship with this person. In other words, there's like a honeymoon phase that part of the relationship or that feeling ends. And it's not really because, a narcissist might get tired or they might want some reciprocation. What they're doing, though, is they're kind of recruiting you in as a supply source to get their needs met. So they might need, a partner. They might need a confidant. They might need a date. They might need a marriage. They might need a relationship. They might need a shoulder to cry on, but it's all about them. And so you see the devalue and the discarding stage that they go through with others, and yet they might hover you back even after making some hurtful statements or things of that nature. So you have to be very careful and look that you don't get wounded through this relationship and struggling and trying with someone who is not emotionally available. The issue with these people is they don't have empathy. They don't have an ability to sort of resonate and engage with you in a heart-to-heart, toe-to-toe, belly-to-belly manner. Heart-to-heart meaning, you really feel like you're connecting. You're making sense to each other. You're sharing something. You're able to connect. You're able to have a back and forth on an emotional level or even intellectual level. But, there's a feeling of resonance and an emotional match with someone who is really listening to you, who gets you, who understands and is there to share with you and your feelings. So that's really, the importance of connection, in that it's not extreme. In other words, you're with this person for 48 hours straight, and then you're not there for 2 weeks, and then you're there for another 16 hours straight, and then, so you don't, the seesaw effect is really what can throw a lot of people off and be very confusing. And then in the meantime, you're always trying to see what you need to do to keep the relationship glued together when you're kind of feeling this devaluing and discarding stage. And this can come at all sorts of different phases of a relationship with someone who is narcissistic. They're just generally not emotionally available. They might have the persona as such in the beginning, but the problem is that their true colors become revealed as time progresses. They're not able to hang in there for, the long haul. They're just not capable. They might have, commitment issues, phobias, a phobia of being in a committed relationship. They get afraid. They're wondering if this is the best of the best. Is there somebody better? Is there a better time? And they might put a lot of their own issues first. You can't, relate to them until they graduate college, or sign this music deal, or win this award, or whatever it is. They might have all these different excuses, putting you on the back burner. I really can't commit, I just can't do this. I have to do this. I have to do this in my life. And then you find that they're not really committed. They're not really there. You can't really have this heart-to-heart feeling. And then gradually you begin to feel more and more empty in the relationship, more and more depleted, more and more depressed, trying to figure it out. What is it that I'm doing that I'm not that's not working? And so then, people oftentimes internalize this, and then beginning to get into the self-sabotage, as well as the loneliness, alienation, and they just can't figure it out. So if you can understand that, and I'm just going to really quickly touch on the situation with someone who is psychopathic, because I want to kind of address both, because I think we have a lot of viewers who have experienced both, and we have a lot of videos that talk about, the female psychopath, the male psychopath in the workplace, in the family, and as well as narcissistic, antisocial, in the antisocial personality disorders, the personality disorders sort of topic, and then what happens when you're quote unquote a supply, you're a target, you're a scapegoat, you've experienced brainwashing, gaslighting, deception, the good old, lies, the good old cheating on me, betraying me, violating me at my workplace, or, backstabbing my, my work accomplishments, my contacts, trying to triangulate you in the office. These are all aspects of someone who is psychopathic, when they're putting forth just this ultra confident image, and just like nerves of steel. So they can be very admirable when you're in relationships with them. They don't get phased. They don't get anxious. They don't really experience fear. So it can be like, wow, does this person have like superpower, or are they magic? They just have this, spell effect on others, where people are like, they don't know why, but they're just attracted to this person. No one else is like them. Well, it could be no one else is like them because they have a antisocial personality disorder, and they show up in a lot of places in life and appear to be very high functioning, but underneath that there is someone who is a ne'er-do-well, someone who is deceptive, someone who is really viewing situations and experiences differently than other people, and they violate social norms, rules, laws, just as if they have no effect. They have no moral sensitivity. And so, they might, engage in a lot of high risk behaviors, or, being sort of aggressive or forward sexually, very seductive, and, and they sort of have this charming effect, the psychopathic gaze, that sort of reptilian stare. You feel, there's like this stun gun effect, where you're like, you just feel like you're honed in, and you feel that you're connected. It feels like a real strong relationship bond. Like, wow, I can just, let it all hang out with this person. This person just seems to get into a relationship very easily with me. All of a sudden we click, 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 and we are just so on fire. We're like two peas in a pod. We're like the perfect hand in a glove. This, seems to be the best relationship fit. And there's all this sort of, feeling of just elation and euphoria with this person. And you don't realize that you're being worked by someone who is a psychopath, because they switch it on and off. They can just really literally like a light, like just really like a showman or a showwoman. And so they might be very charismatic in this, but there's something usually very different about their gaze, where it really pulls people in. And in a way where you kind of lose footing, and you're feeling that that this is an emotional connection. So it's really a substitute for an emotional connection, because you're not getting the real deal from these people. You're not, it's what you see is not what you get. There is something else. There's another agenda which you're completely unaware of, and you feel unassailable that this relationship will always be. And they might make you feel committed and very special and very hooked in with them. And they're very, very special. There's something about the way that they walk, the way that they look, the way that their body moves. It just seems to be so attractive. And they might say things that are like kind of coming out of nowhere. Psychopathic word salad. Things that are out of context, and they sort of rearrange words, feelings, emotions according to how they want to brainwash you and sort of get you distracted and sort of take over, and like an emotional net, they sort of catch you and then rearrange your perspective. So it's very terrifying and very scary thing when you sort of come through this and you begin to kind of smoke them out, and you see that this person is a manipulator, and not just any old manipulator, a master manipulator, like you've never experienced before. And you thought that, you must adapt and adjust to them. They're so very powerful. And I just use that word meaning that they oftentimes are in positions of power, and they oftentimes do climb, the corporate ladder. They are just sneaky. You'll find that they do things that most other people wouldn't do. And you think, wow, that person is really driven, or that person is really smart, or they're so intellectual, or they're so talented, whatever it is. There's that they are so, they seem to really stand out, and this person is so different. Well, yes, because there's something different about this person's personality, makeup, and constitution. And so there's this, feeling that they are doing things and moving around through things that most people would think about, hesitate, not do, not consider an option. They are the total opportunists, and they'll take whatever they want, and no matter what that is, if it's someone's body, a place to live, a place for their kids to hang out, a job title, without having sort of really exposed their true self, which is antisocial. And they're well aware of this early on, but the thing is, it has a disguise of an emotional connection, like really being there for you. So people just fall for them, what I call hook, line, and sinker, very, very rapidly and very completely. And so it's this complete sort of feeling like of throwing yourself to them that oftentimes gets people in trouble. And then there's this addiction to that relationship. There's something about it that has a spark or a real sort of emotional glue, which sort of really is like a super glue. It's a very different bond with someone who's psychopathic, someone who is narcissistic, and versus just sort of the bulk of society, which has a wide spectrum of different personality types. But we're talking about when things get uncomfortable, when things have caused you really unhappiness, confusion. Why did this happen? You're left with more questions than answers. You're kind of like there is something awry here that I have to figure out. There's this feeling of contemplation, brooding, trying to reflect on things, and then how do I change myself to be and fit in here? So there's this other external locus of control versus internal locus of control. A feeling that there's something outside of you that you must impress, adjust, and adapt to, versus sort of being in your own skin and being, whole, complete, and emotionally connected with yourself. So there's this, people experience sort of a feeling of loss of self in these sort of relationships because they are then required to stay with it, to be so emotionally connected, to abandon, what I call kind of abandon themselves in order to keep the glue of the relationship going, to be other-centered, other-focused. What are their needs? What are their feelings? And then so there's this depletion within the self. There's this empty feeling of emptiness, loneliness. Something is not right, and wondering what it is. So oftentimes, people who are as, who are feeling the supply, the other, to the narcissist, to the overt narcissist or covert narcissist, where the covert narcissist really sort of, the problem is this disengagement through withdrawal. It's this withdrawing of availability, this withholding of attention, this knowing that there's an emotion there that could be shared, but they just don't share it. You're like, I know you have some emotion in there that I think you should be sharing, but there's something wrong because we're not connecting. And so then becomes this other focus, like, well, let me work harder in order to get to know this person. And if I, have the Mother Teresa, or the martyr attitude or mindset, which if I only become altruistic, selfless, and do whatever that other person needs and wants, and that's the best way to go. If I just, fulfill their desires, fulfill their needs, fulfill their questions, be available for them always, and not be available to myself but by accommodating and adjusting and impressing them, or being there in the way that they want you to be there for you, and not be there for the way that you want there to be for you, or that you need for them to be there for you, there can be a real problem, because it's becoming this other-centered focus. It's focusing on the needs of another while not attending and attuning to your own. So it becomes, your life feels disattuned or unattuned or out of attunement or out of tune, just out of sync. There's no more music in your life. You might have a sudden or gradual stop to the happiness and the butterflies and the puppies and the happiness and the smiles. You might not experience that, when you're going through the phase of trying to figure it out and pull yourself away and out of that other-centered focus to try to always be there for their emotional needs and mistake them for your own. So it's then living a life that then becomes kind of splintered off or separated off or segmented off or kind of sliced off, where you have to, a lot of people feel it's create a false self or a false ego or a false persona or a false identity in order to adjust and accommodate to this person's needs. So you have to be a specific way. And after a while, that becomes not, that ain't no fun when you have to put up a show, a facade, an ego, and once again, you might have to rise to the challenge when you have specific events at your work. You might have to really grow and be on it, so you're developing a new strength. But this doesn't happen with a relationship with someone who's not emotionally available, because sometimes the harder you try, the further away they go. The harder you try, the further away they go. So you end up then pivoting around this person. Let's just do a little dance. Let's just dance around this person. The maypole, like they're the center of it all. And, a lot of people become happy or content doing that. But eventually, when that person is, basically is like, gradually I can't be there. I can't do that. And then you find that they've already got somebody else who they're kind of scoping out, and then you're feeling like, wait, we have a communication breakdown here. And so that is a problem with emotional availability, with somebody who is narcissistic, and then definitely someone who's psychopathic, who puts on a complete front persona, and they aren't anything like they represent themselves to be. There is absolutely no person within that person that is the person who they pretend to be. And it's really mind-boggling, and I think maybe fascinating or interesting for some people who have been in relationships with those who are psychopathic to be, it just almost seems inhuman, like not even humanly capable that they could live a life like that, because their chemical makeup is completely different from the rest of society. And so, but they do hurt and devastate others in the wake of their relationships. They just leave a wake of disappointed, bankrupt, lost, terrorized victims. And it can be very, very, very problematic for those individuals who have been, in trying to be aligned with them, who have moved in, who have shared a living space, who have shared family, who have shared marriages, who have shared, with these as a boss, and they find out that all this stuff that you thought was going to be there in your future ain't there. In fact, not only is it not there, you have now been damaged, as a result, emotionally damaged, and difficult to really reconnect with yourself and find where your emotional center is. So it becomes very important to find your emotional center. Your emotional center, meaning what keeps you going and in the flow and connected to within yourself in life, so you don't have this feeling of, a real difference between myself as I am and myself who I have to pretend to be, in order to please or pacify a narcissist or a psychopath. So once again, there's this embracing of yourself and just being who you are, and not falling for the manipulations or the hurt that being in a relationship with these people create. So the hurt, realizing the cause, once again, that's created this effect and this loneliness and this division, is to realize that you are trying to connect with someone who is not emotionally available. So it's like, well, knowing that to be the case, then you can logically and in your heart and mind together say, then if this person's not emotionally available, I can't plug in to that person. No light is going to go on. There ain't nothing to plug into there. You can plug in to yourself and see that you're a real human being, but you don't have a sense of being growing personally, or somebody getting to know you, let alone getting to know yourself, when you stay in relationships that are of this sort of flavor, where there's sort of a facade, there has to be a fakeness, a lack of being genuine, a feeling you have to show up and impress. You can't just be yourself. You have to put on a facade, a show, pretend, be fake, etc. And, that becomes very empty. Very empty, meaning meaningless. There is a lack of meaning and cohesiveness and cohesion with these people, because you can't share things only really sort of superficially with these individuals. There's not a feeling of depth. And this person might experience a certain depth for themselves, but really everybody else just gets this feeling that, oh, you should be so honored to be with me. And that, that's what you should take out of this experience, is that you get to know me versus getting to know yourself. You can see me and all my foils and problems and ups and downs, and all that drama should be enough for you to be entertained. In other words, this is feeling like, and then you can't get to know yourself, or you can't be known by this person because you feel like they don't really know you, because there isn't this emotional connection. There isn't this openness and approachability and just being sort of known, so you might feel that this person doesn't really know me. So there's a feeling of the gap, the delay. There's this distinct divide between your truth and then who you have to be. So we call this basically a gap. So you want to reduce the gap so you're in alignment with your needs and then what's going on around you, and there's this connection with people around you that you share and has depth and meaning and consistency, and you can call on it. And it might be bigger, it might be smaller, it might be stronger, it might be weaker, but there is kind of a core connection from being able to share, and have this positive sharing cycle with people who don't have a need for narcissism or antisocial personality disorder. So we talk about how important it is to be able to surround yourself with others who are of like mind, who are emotionally available, who have empathy. So you might need to seek that out. That might be part of your goals in your discovery journal, is that, I need to get to know some different types of people. And it's not this and it's not that, but somewhere in the middle, there's got to be sort of a place where I can find spiritual support, relationships, being able to share with people, do things where, you can come and go and not feel that you have to be alarmed, afraid, this person doesn't approve, or I'm going to get, an emotional cold shoulder. They don't have a need to use all this mind trickery in order to have a relationship, And people in their 20s, 30s, teens, there's probably a lot of this going on where people are still trying to find themselves and create their identity. But, having an emotional connection is super important. So you might realize that, number one, no matter how you're coming out of relationships that are manipulative, that you might need to really take stock and ask yourself, maybe I need to focus within myself and stop this other focus and look for emotional availability, and where are my emotions at this time? And, if they're sort of sullen, if they're happy, if they're excited, then, be able to say, I feel, I am, and notice your feelings, and notice what you are really emotionally open for and are really interested in, which might be something that the other person had not approved of. So you have a difficult time doing that because you're always looking for their approval. It's important to be able to disappoint others and approve of yourself. So you need to get, approval from yourself and realize that you might need to disappoint someone who is narcissistic or psychopathic, and let them go and get, out of that other-centered focus, and being able to, sink within and have your own emotional availability, and, being able to cater and attend to as number one, and, and become attuned to what I need. So mainly you can ask yourself this question: mainly what I need today is, mainly today what I feel is, what I would really enjoy is, what I've really been missing out is, and what I've been doing too much of is, what I'm really getting exhausted from is, what really depletes me is, what really drags me down is, what I'm going to stop doing today, actually what I'm going to stop doing right now is, and what I need to start doing right now is. So getting this feeling of kind of like being able to get a sense of what is holding you down and then what is setting you to fly. So getting a sense of having that sort of, I don't want to say black or white thinking, but, looking at really what is the depletion and what is the pick-me-up. What is the letdown and what is the uplifting. So being able to sort of, what I call understanding what is your negative orderly direction thinking, what I call nod thinking, like, ain't gonna do that, that's not gonna work for me, versus pod thinking, positive orderly direction thinking, where you're making a decision and you're following your vision in order to manifest the positive in a new light, which is guided by this internal locus of control, which isn't always trying to check in and be hypersensitive to the needs of another. People who have had trauma bonds in their past are hypersensitive to others' feelings. It's like they're trying to, find out, how do I please others? because they're so used to that. They're so programmed. They've been traumatized or have had a crisis in that area where they've had to be hyper attuned to others' needs in order to, reduce anxiety or reduce punishment or to get some sort of feeling of connection. So if they're deprived of this connection early in their life, that they don't have this feeling of connection with their caregivers, their parents, their siblings. Your parents are the first to be there for you. I mean, it's a big job. So you can see if there's a deprivation there, then that's, to look at and being able to self-manage, and be attuned to yourself. So look at really being attuned to those. This is your buddy. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please do share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace out. Love ya.